Hi, welcome to Noumena, the only place that's reverse engineered the College Board. We're going to show you how to solve these problems very quickly with mathematical precision and with 100% confidence. That means you no longer have to rely on the answer key, but purely on the power of knowledge. The mind is a powerful tool, and we're going to show you how to use it. Here's how it's done.
Question 21. One of my favorite questions. Not many authors have described the effects of environmental pollution as effective as Rachel Carson, whose work is still a model for nature writers. Let's look at choice A. In choice A, we would do a modifier check, because many here is functioning as a noun determiner, modifying authors, and since it's also a pronoun, I'm going to do a pronoun check. So, if we look at many, it's modifying authors, which seems to be plural. Authors is plural. And so, when indefinite, let's look at the note. When indefinite pronouns such as many, one, a few, and etc. Are used, they must agree in number with the noun they're modifying. So in this case, many does agree with authors, which is plural. Many is plural, authors is plural. What do you think, Bryson?
I think you're right. We have our plural authors and our indefinite pronoun many. So it looks like we do not have an error here in A. And the pronoun is good, the modifier is good. I think A checks out.
So would you like to move on to B?
Yeah, let's move on to B. Have described. For B, we're going to test for subject, verb, verb tense, and verb form. Well, subject verb should be easy, right, Anthony Sonsini? We already established our subject, but could this cause us some problems here?
Not for those who've mastered grammar.
So what about for those of us who have some issues still?
You need to take a look at our clips.
Okay.
But before we do that, let's look at the word not. I know some of you are confused about negative words that come in front of subjects.
Yeah, those confuse me sometimes.
A good rule of thumb is just to get rid of it. So let's get rid of it. So what do we have then? Many authors. Isn't that plural?
Yeah, it is.
And remember, has is the singular form and have is the plural form. So many authors, a plural subject is taking on a plural helping verb, have.
So then we don't have an error here.
Don't have an error, at least not in subject verb.
Okay, so what about verb tense? I see this is written in the present perfect tense, have described. Can we use the present perfect tense in this sentence?
We can, because what the sentence is trying to say is that until now, no one has done it better, or no one has described the effects of environmental pollution better than Rachel Carson. So, since we're including all time until now, the present perfect tense is perfect for this sentence. We can go on more about the present perfect tense, but because we have to continue with the question, I suggest that you go to our clip and look at our tense clips. We have a very, very detailed explanation of how each and every single tense can be used properly and appropriately. In addition to that, how they're tested on the SATs. So go to our clips to learn more about the present perfect tense. Let's move on to verb forms. Is there anything that you can teach us about verb forms here, Bryson?
Well, we've already established that have described is written in the present perfect tense. And we know that we can construct the present perfect tense with have or has plus past participle. But if we were to change one of these words into a different form, let's take have, for instance. If we were to change have to maybe the present participle form, having, and we would have having described, and that wouldn't work because we would now have no main verb and we'd have a fragment.
Wait a minute, can I just do a check? Many authors having described the effects. Oh, I see what you mean. So if we were to change have to having, we would be eliminating a crucial component of the sentence.
Definitely. And again, remember, you need a subject and a verb to have a complete sentence. And if we were to switch it to having, we would not.
How about have describing?
Sorry?
How about have describing?
Have describing. Well, we can't change describe to describing because then we've already established that the present perfect tense is appropriate here. And if we change that describe to describing, we wouldn't have the present perfect tense. Again, because we make the present perfect tense with have or has plus the past participle,
Right.
not present participle.
But isn't have describing, wouldn't that also cause a fragment?
It would. So
how about then have been describing? How would that work?
Have been describing. Well, one again takes us into a different tense, and still it wouldn't be appropriate with the been and the describing.
Because have been describing would mean that the authors never stopped describing the effects of environmental. Wow, those are some authors.
Yeah. Definitely impressive authors, but not what we're talking about here.
Right. It wouldn't make any logical sense. I don't know any authors who would non-stop, continuously
describing the effects of
describe the effects of it, right?
Yeah.
They would have to stop sometime.
Yeah.
So the difference between the present perfect progressive tense have been describing and the present perfect tense have described is that one, the present perfect progressive usually denotes an action that continues on from the past until now, non-stop. However, the present perfect can describe events that intermittently happen, regularly happen, or an action that started in the past, and we're not so much worried about whether this action stopped, but the fact that it continued until now. So the present perfect tense seems to work better here.
Yeah, I agree. So we have no errors, subject verb, no verb tense errors, and the verb form is okay.
Yeah, let's move on to C before our students' brains explode.
Let's do that. As effective as. For C, we're going to test for idiom, comparison, modifier errors. Do you remember when we told you we were going to spoon feed you idioms? We have just one of those idioms here. You should memorize the following structure as noted at the top of the slide. As plus adjective or adverb plus as.
Isn't this a comparison idiom?
It sure is. And comparison, if we know that the idiom's correct, then the comparison should be correct as well. We need to make sure that we're comparing like items. What are we comparing here, Anthony Sonsenin?
I think they're trying to compare what Rachel Carson has done to what many authors have done, or vice versa, what many authors have done to what Rachel Carson has done. So I think the idiom comparison here checks out.
I do too. So we're left with what? A modifier check.
So effective, what part of speech is that?
Well, effective is an adjective.
And adjectives modify
nouns.
Oh.
Well,
you see something I see here?
Well, I think so. If adjectives modify nouns, it looks like effective would probably try to modify the effects.
Really? So let's take a look at how that would work then. So not many authors have described the effects of environmental pollution as effective as Rachel Carson. So if this were function as an adjective, it means that effective is modifying effects. So not many authors have described the effective effects of environmental pollution. I hope environmental pollution wasn't very effective, because that would make our environment worse than it is.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. I think we need to change this. Instead of the adjective effective, we need to possibly turn it into an adverb.
An adverb. So don't adverbs modify adjectives, adverbs? or verbs?
Sure. Yes, of course they do. So
What can it possibly modify in this case?
Well, it'll be our verb, have described.
You mean have described?
Yes, have described.
And are you telling me that effective should be an adverb?
And that's exactly what I'm saying. It definitely should be an adverb.
So let's give that a try. Not many authors have described the effects of environmental pollution as effectively as Rachel Carson.
That sounds right to me.
Actually, does it sound right or is it correct?
It's correct. You know why it's correct?
Why is that correct?
Because we used the method. We used grammar.
Aren't you being a little bit presumptuous here, Brian?
We sure are, but that's how confident we are in our method.
Great. Let's move on to D.
A model 4. In D, we're going to check for number agreement and idiom errors. Well, for number agreement, I see a model singular. Does that work if we're describing the author's or even Rachel Carson's work?
It certainly does, because a model, in this case, is referring back to work, which is singular. So both are singular, so there's no number disagreement here. It seems to work fine. What about idioms?
Well, I see a 4, but I also remember what we always like to remind ourselves and the listeners out there, that we do not chase idioms.
And didn't we just spoon feed them an idiom in the previous slide?
We sure did.
So what should we do with this one?
We should not chase it. If this was an important idiom, we would spoon feed you this idiom as well.
Great.
And our answer is C. It's a modifier error. Here we need to change our adjective effective to our adverb effectively.
And remember, we fed you the idiom as plus adjective or adverb plus as. In this case, you remember, right, Brian?
Yep.
In this case, we didn't have an error concerning this idiom, but on many questions, you will see this idiom again. So memorize it.
Noumena, empowering mind.